We're implementing a strategic realignment of our engineering and geology departments, Earl. It's about creating synergies and optimizing our operational oversight. The words came from Blake Thompson, a man half my age wearing a suit that cost more than my first truck. He leaned back in his leather chair, a picture of corporate confidence. As part of this transition, your position as chief mining engineer has been made redundant. He said it so smoothly, like he was ordering coffee. Redundant. After 30 years of service. My name is Earl Hutchinson. I'm 56 years old. And until 10:15 a.m. on Tuesday, October 22, 2024, I was the man who kept Western Minerals Group from turning its mines into billion-dollar graves. Blake slid a thin folder across the vast mahogany table in the 40th floor conference room. The Denver skyline glittered behind him, oblivious. This is your severance package. It's quite generous. We've also included a standard non-disclosure and non-compete agreement. I didn't touch the folder. I just looked at him. At his perfect teeth, his crisp white collar, his $8,000 watch. He was the son of a major shareholder, brought in 18 months ago as the new vice president of operations. His degree was in finance from Wharton. He never set foot in a mine shaft, never tasted coal dust, never had to calculate the load-bearing capacity of a rock bolt with the lives of 80 men hanging on his answer. 30 years, Blake, I said. My voice was steady. Level. The way it always was when I was calculating a blast pattern. He gave a small, condescending smile. And we appreciate your service, Earl. Truly. But we're moving towards a more agile, data-driven model. The board feels we need new perspectives. He gestured vaguely, as if new perspectives were floating in the air. Madison will be heading the new combined division. She's got a fantastic PhD in geological data science from Stanford. Madison was 29. I'd taught her how to read a seismograph when she was an intern. What Blake Thompson, with his Wharton MBA and his complete ignorance of the ground beneath his feet, didn't understand was that he hadn't just fired an employee. He had just pulled the pin on a $340 million grenade. He just didn't know it yet. The silence in the room was his timer. If you appreciate stories about quiet competence trumping loud arrogance, and how the fine print can become a sledgehammer, hit that like button and subscribe right now. I've got a lot of stories about how corporate greed gets exactly what it deserves, and you won't want to miss a single one. I started with Western Minerals in 1994. It was a different company then, run by a man named Arthur Hemlock. He was a geologist of the old school who believed in rock samples you could hold in your hand, not just data points on a screen. I was 26, fresh out of the Colorado School of Mines, and full of theories. Hemlock hired me to work the North Ridge anthracite site in Wyoming. It was a tough, unforgiving place, but it taught me that theory bends to the will of geology, not the other way around. For 3 decades, I was the foundation. I wasn't just a name on an org chart. I was the institutional memory of the company. I was the one they called at 3 a.m. when a dewatering pump failed at the Utah copper mine. I was the one who designed the ventilation system for the Silver Creek expansion in Nevada, a project that won us a National Safety Award in 2011. I personally averted a catastrophic roof collapse at the Black Mesa site in 2008 by spotting a fissure pattern everyone else had missed, saving the company from tens of millions in damages and, more importantly, saving lives. I missed my daughter's 4th birthday because I was overseeing a rescue operation after a seismic event. I spent my 20th wedding anniversary on a conference call coordinating the response to a tailings dam leak. My life was a series of sacrifices made on the altar of the company's success. I didn't mind. It was my work. It was what I did. I built value, real, tangible value that you could measure in tons of extracted ore and, more importantly, in years without a single fatality. Then, Old Man Hemlock retired in 2022, and the board, eager for a modern touch, brought in new blood. Blake Thompson was the worst of them. He walked the halls with an air of detached superiority, speaking the language of buzzwords and metrics that had no connection to the messy, unpredictable reality of pulling resources out of the earth. He saw experienced engineers not as assets, but as liabilities on a balance sheet. He believed any problem could be solved with the right algorithm. The breaking point came in February 2020. No, that's not right. The crucial moment, the one that set all this in motion, came much earlier. Back in 2013. I was sitting with Old Man Hemlock in a dusty site trailer at a new exploratory dig in Arizona. The coffee was bitter, and the air smelled of diesel and dry heat. We were looking over new federal regulations from the Mine Safety and Health Administration, MSHA. They were tightening the certification requirements for chief engineers and mine foremen, especially for high-risk operations. Hemlock tapped the document with a calloused finger. "This is where they get you, Earl," he said, his voice a low rumble. "The lawyers in Denver, they'll want the company to hold these certifications. They'll see it as corporate property." I nodded. "Makes sense. The company is the operator." "No," he said, looking me straight in the eye. "It makes sense for them. It doesn't make sense for you. You're the one putting in the years. You're the one with the knowledge. The company pays for the training, sure. But the credential, the license, that belongs to the man who earned it. It's tied to your name, your experience, your judgment." He leaned forward. "I want you to get every single one of these top-tier certifications. The ones for complex underground operations, the ones for surface blasting, the ones for hazardous materials handling. All of them. And when you file the paperwork with MSHA, you make sure they are issued to Earl Hutchinson. Not to an employee of Western Minerals Group. They are your personal, professional property." "Why, Arthur?" I asked. "I'm not planning on going anywhere." "Insurance," he said, taking a sip of his coffee. "Insurance against the day when someone with a fancy degree who has never been underground decides your salary is a budget line that needs to be cut. They can fire an employee, Earl. They can't fire a federal requirement. So I did it." Over the next 5 years, I spent hundreds of hours in training and exams. I became one of a handful of engineers in the country to hold that specific combination of advanced MSHA certifications. For each of our 12 major producing sites, my name and my certification numbers were on the official operating permits filed with the federal government. I was, in the eyes of the law, the single point of accountability. The designated competent person. Without my signature on the quarterly reports, without my name on those permits, the mines were just holes in the ground. They couldn't legally operate. This was my secret weapon. A weapon forged by a wise mentor's advice and 18 years of specialized experience. Blake Thompson had just walked onto a battlefield he didn't even know existed. Back in the conference room, the silence stretched. Security was waiting outside the door. A young man named Carl, who had helped get a loan for his first car a few years back. He wouldn't make eye contact. "Security will escort you from the premises," Blake said, his tone final. "Your personal effects from your office have been boxed up." I stood up slowly. My knees ached. 30 years of climbing in and out of haul trucks and service elevators. I looked at Blake, then at the HR representative, a woman named Sharon who had been there for maybe 2 years. "I do not accept the decision to terminate my employment," I stated, my voice calm and clear. Blake actually laughed. A short, sharp bark. "You don't have to accept it, Earl. It's a decision that's been made. It's not a negotiation. Everything is a negotiation," I said. Then I turned and walked out of the room. Carl, the security guard, looked pained. "Sorry, Earl," he mumbled. "Not your fault, son," I said, clapping him on the shoulder. They handed me a single cardboard box at the security desk. My photos of my wife and daughter, my favorite coffee mug, a geology hammer Hemlock had given me. It felt impossibly light. As I walked out of the building I'd helped pay for, into the crisp October air, I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was a dead calm. The kind of calm that comes when you see the whole board, all the pieces, and you know exactly what your next move is. I drove my 2018 Ford F-250 home, the box sitting on the passenger seat. I didn't speed. I didn't run the radio. I just drove and thought. Blake's arrogance was his critical error. He assumed he understood the system he was in charge of. He saw my salary, $285,000 a year, and saw a cost to be cut. He saw my age and saw a relic. He never once bothered to look at the MSHA permit filings. He never asked why my name, and only my name, was on all of them. He was a spreadsheet man, and I was a detail he'd overlooked. When I got home, my wife, Sarah, knew something was wrong the moment I walked in. The box in my hands was a dead giveaway. I explained what happened calmly, factually. She was furious, ready to call a lawyer, ready to fight. "We will fight," I told her, putting my hands on her shoulders. "But not their way. We're going to fight my way. With procedure." The first thing I did was not call a lawyer. I went into my home office, sat down at my desk, and pulled up the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 30, Mineral Resources. I knew the relevant sections by heart, but I read them again anyway. Part 483A. It was crystal clear. Every active mining operation must have a designated, federally certified chief engineer or mine foreman of record. Any change in that designation must be reported to the regional MSHA office immediately. An operation without a valid, certified individual on its permit is to be issued an immediate stop work order. My first call was to my contact at the MSHA regional office, a man named Dave Jensen. We'd known each other for years, spoken at the same safety conferences. "Dave, it's Earl Hutchinson." "Earl! Good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "I'm calling to provide official notification," I said, my voice all business. "As of 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time today, October 22nd, I am no longer employed by Western Minerals Group. You'll need to update the records. I am formally relinquishing my position as the certified engineer of record for the following permits." I then read off the 12 permit numbers, one by one. The ones for our 12 most productive sites, accounting for over $340 million in annual production. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Dave was a bureaucrat, but he was a sharp one. He knew exactly what I was saying. "Understood, Earl," he said finally, his tone now formal. "I have your notification recorded as of 3:42 p.m. The necessary actions will be taken in accordance with federal regulations. Notices will be issued to the operator of record within 24 hours. "Thank you, Dave," I said and hung up. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the animal to walk into it. The first day was quiet. I spent it in my workshop, fixing a wobbly leg on our dining room table. My phone buzzed a few times. The site manager from the Nevada mine. The operations lead from Utah. I let them go to voicemail. It wasn't their problem yet. The second day, the real storm began. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. It was Bill, the director for the Wyoming region. A good man I'd worked with for 20 years. I ignored the call. Then came texts. "Earl, call me. Urgent, Earl, MSHA is here." "What's going on?" By noon, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Calls from regional VPs, from the legal department, from a panic-sounding Sharon in HR. I pictured the chaos unfolding in that Denver high-rise. I imagined Blake Thompson, striding into his office with his morning latte, feeling pleased with his cost-saving measure, only to be met with a tidal wave of panic. The official stop work orders would have arrived by certified mail and email. 12 of them. Each one representing a silent, paralyzed mine. Each one bleeding money. I did the math on a notepad. The combined daily production value of those 12 sites was roughly $931,000. That was revenue. The actual operational cost, the money they were burning just keeping the lights on and equipment idle, was probably close to $15 million per day. And that didn't account for the breached supply contracts and the penalties they'd incur. By my conservative estimate, Blake's optimization was costing the company about $28 million every 24 hours. That evening, a courier delivered a letter to my house. It was from the company's general counsel. A formal, threatening letter demanding I immediately cooperate in transferring my certifications. It spoke of fiduciary duty and professional responsibility. I wrote a simple reply on my own letterhead and sent it back with the same courier. To whom it may concern, federal mining certifications are the property of the individual to whom they are issued. They are non-transferable. As I am no longer an employee of Western Minerals Group, I have no further professional obligations to the company. Sincerely, Earl Hutchinson. The third day, the story hit the financial news. Western Minerals Group halts operations at 12 key sites amid regulatory issues. The company's stock dropped 18% in morning trading. That was a loss of about $400 million in market capitalization. All to save my $285,000 salary. Blake Thompson's synergies were proving to be quite expensive. At 1 p.m., I got the call I was waiting for. The caller ID showed the main switchboard for the Denver headquarters. I let it ring 4 times, then answered. Earl Hutchinson. It was the chairman of the board, Marcus Thorne. A man I respected, but who had been blinded by Blake's flashy presentations. His voice was strained. Earl. We need you to come in. Now. There's been a significant oversight. I'm a little busy, Marcus, I said, looking out my window at the bird feeder in my backyard. A blue jay was chasing off a sparrow. Earl, please, he said. There was no arrogance in his voice now. Just raw, undisguised desperation. Name your terms. Just get down here. I'll be there at 3 o'clock, I said. And Marcus? Have Blake Thompson in the room. I hung up. I put on my best suit. Not an expensive one, but a well-made American one. I polished my work boots until they shone. I gathered my notes. Then I drove back to the city, back to the glass tower where they thought they had discarded me. I walked into the same 40th floor conference room. This time, it was full. Marcus Thorne was at the head of the table. The rest of the board was patched in on a giant video screen, their faces grim and pixelated. The company's top 3 lawyers were there. And sitting to Marcus's right, looking pale and shrunken in his expensive suit, was Blake Thompson. He looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. His hair wasn't perfect anymore. I took a seat opposite him. I placed my leather-bound notebook on the table in front of me. Earl, Marcus began. Thank you for coming. It seems there has been a catastrophic failure in our internal processes. A miscommunication of epic proportions. There was no miscommunication, Marcus, I said, my voice filling the silent room. Blake terminated my employment. He called me redundant. He had me escorted from the building. Those actions have consequences. Blake started to speak, a desperate squeak. I wasn't aware of the specifics of the MSHA filings. I turned my eyes on him. Cold. Hard. The same look I gave a foreman who tried to cut corners on safety. You weren't aware? You're the vice president of operations. It is the literal definition of your job to be aware. You didn't do your due diligence. You saw a number on a spreadsheet, and you thought you were being clever. I looked back at Marcus. As a result of Blake's decision, this company is currently losing approximately $28 million per day in direct losses and penalties. Your stock has lost over $400 million in value. And your reputation with federal regulators is in tatters. All because he wanted to impress the board by cutting my salary. The board members on the screen shifted uncomfortably. What do you want, Earl? Marcus asked, his voice low. How do we fix this? This was the moment. The culmination of 30 years of work and one piece of timeless advice. I opened my notebook. This is not a negotiation, I said, echoing Blake's words back at him. This is a statement of terms. If you want your mines running by tomorrow morning, you will agree to the following, effective immediately. I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. 1. I will be retained not as an employee, but as an independent consultant via my own newly formed company, Hutchinson Mining Solutions, LLC. The contract will be for a non-cancelable term of 5 years. 2. My consulting fee will be $850,000 per year, paid in quarterly installments. In addition, my company will receive a bonus equivalent to 1% of the net profit from the 12 sites I oversee. 3. A new executive position will be created, Executive Vice President of Safety and Regulatory Compliance. I will hold that title. I will have full operational authority over all engineering and safety divisions, including hiring and firing. I will report directly to the board, not to the VP of Operations. 4. As a signing bonus for my new consulting firm, and as compensation for my wrongful termination, the company will wire $25 million to my account within the next 12 hours. This is non-negotiable. I took a breath and looked directly at Blake Thompson. And 5. Blake Thompson's employment is to be terminated. Effective immediately. For cause. And I want to watch him be escorted from the building by the same security guard who walked me out. The room was utterly silent. Blake's face had gone from pale to a ghastly shade of gray. The lawyers were staring at their notepads. Marcus Thorne looked at the faces on the screen. One by one they nodded. The board is in unanimous agreement, Earl, Marcus said, his voice heavy with resignation. Draw up the contracts. He turned to Blake. Blake, you're fired. Please gather your personal effects. Blake just sat there, stunned. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Carl, the security guard, entered the room, looking even more uncomfortable than he had 3 days ago. He walked over to Blake and quietly said, Sir, please come with me. I watched as the man who had called me redundant, who had dismissed my life's work as an unnecessary expense, was quietly and efficiently removed from power. He didn't even look at me as he left. He couldn't. The aftermath was swift and decisive. The contracts were signed before I left the building. The $25 million was in my bank account the next morning. I made one phone call to Dave Jensen at MSHA, informing him I was once again the engineer of record, this time as an independent contractor. The stop work orders were lifted by noon. The mines roared back to life. The stock price rebounded, though not completely. Trust, like rock strata, is easier to fracture than to repair. Blake Thompson disappeared from the industry. His colossal, 9-figure blunder became a cautionary tale told in boardrooms and site trailers across the country. I heard 6 months later that he was selling high-end real estate in Aspen, trading on his family name because his professional one was worthless. The HR representative, Sharon, who had sat silently by during my firing, was one of the first people I let go under my new authority. I replaced her with someone who understood that human resources were actually humans. The other VPs who had championed Blake's new vision suddenly became my most ardent supporters, their praise as loud as their previous silence had been deafening. I spent the next 5 years restructuring the company's entire approach to safety and operations. I brought back experienced engineers Blake had pushed out, and I mentored a new generation, including Madison. I taught them what Hemlock had taught me, that the numbers on a spreadsheet are meaningless without an understanding of the ground truth. That value isn't just measured in dollars, but in experience, judgment, and integrity. My life was better than ever. The money was one thing, but the real prize was the respect and the control over my own work. I was no longer an employee to be discarded. I was the bedrock on which the company's operations were built. I attended my daughter's college graduation without a single work call. I took my wife on a 2-month trip to Italy, something we'd dreamed of for decades. I was home for dinner every night. Sometimes I look at the geology hammer old man Hemlock gave me, which now sits on my desk. It's a simple tool, designed for one purpose, to break open rocks and see what's inside. In the end, that's all I did. I broke open the polished, arrogant facade of a company that had lost its way, and reminded them of the hard, unyielding reality at its core. A Wharton MBA can teach you how to read a balance sheet. It can't teach you the resonant frequency of Devonian shale, or the exact angle of repose for a tailings dam. Some things you can't optimize. You just have to know. Your value doesn't disappear just because others can't see it. Sometimes you just have to wait for the right moment to show them exactly what it's worth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hit that like button, leave a comment letting me know what you think, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one.